Charisma codes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about why I needed to run this masterclass in the first place. And the reason is because charisma is it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and not a lot of people understand what it means. We have an idea, but we don't really understand the art of it. How do we actually use that skill? It's something that people believe others just have or that we're born with, but it's really not just an innate thing. Okay. So for those of you who don't actually know me and who've never met me, my name's Stephanie. You can call me Steph. All right. I have a strong background in public speaking. So if you've started following me on socials recently, if you've worked with me here before in Dubai, if you've come to a masterclass of mine online or in person, you'll know that I often say, yes, I am a public speaker, but I'm also a researcher and a communications coach. My other background is also in business. So I have two businesses. One is an education consulting company called Advance, and the other is SIP here in Dubai, which is a smoothie company. My background, ladies, is public speaking and performing arts. Okay. So I have 30 years of experience in that area. And then I've taught and led in education for 15 years. All right. I'm a published co-author, and I'm also a writer for an educational magazine here. But on a personal level, I'm mother. Okay. I'm a health and fitness enthusiast. I'm a wife. Life keeps me busy. Okay. But in Dubai, what I have found is that there are so many women, especially here, from all over the world. And we've all got these different things that have made us up in our profession. One thing we're lacking is a strong strategy to empower us, okay? And a lot of you here today, you've already got great confidence. You've already got amazing skills in whatever your profession is. But sometimes we just need that little bit of coaching or training to help us keep developing our personal side and also our professional side. Okay. And that's really why I created these masterclasses, is so that we can actually keep progressing on a personal level. So what I want to know is that if you can tell me in the chat, why are you here? Because I always like to know, when something's optional, what has actually brought you to this space? What calls you here today? If it's the morning for you, Leah, you've just arrived back from overseas. It's summer holidays for some of us. You could be probably just doing other work right now. For people in Australia, it's the afternoon. I'm sure it's getting to crazy hour for those of you who are mums. So what calls you to this space today? Why sign up for a course called Charisma Codes? Candy, to listen to the Queen of Speak. And really think about as well, what perhaps in your life, where are you at the moment with your own communication skills, and what are you hoping to actually achieve? How do you want to develop those communication skills? Might be something as well that you want to think about. So Serena, speaking with flow and with impact. Yes, impact and communication is the biggest thing that I talk about. Ladies, if you're just joining, we're just sharing in the chat. What calls you to this space today? Why are you here in the first place? Crystal, showing up in places that you need more presence in. Crystal, do you want to give me some examples as well in the chat? And if you're with Crystal, if you're like, I need to show up more readily in places, it could be work, it could be social media, it could be just in everyday social settings. Maybe it's just in every facet of your life that you need to be more present and more dominant. Tell me what specific areas that you want to actually start to show up with more presence in. And good morning to the people, or good afternoon, who are just joining as well. Okay, so I'm always intrigued to know why you're here and what sort of things call you to the space, because it says a lot about what's important to you. Okay, it says a lot about your why. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about my why. Okay, and yes, the little curly girl on the screen, that is me, all right, at about 4 or 5 years old. I was born with what a lot of people would say is charisma. Okay. They would look at me as a child and go, oh, she can just talk to anyone. She's super vibrant. I was very much a people person, probably really cheeky as well, as you can see from that smile. But in general, I was someone who really, really enjoyed being around people. I got a lot of my energy from being around people. What happened though is, as I progressed through school, you meet people, you have things happen to you. I actually started to lose what I thought was charisma. Okay. And it actually wasn't charisma, because what I realized is charisma has 5 really important elements to it that I'm going to teach you today that you can go away with, but you have to keep working on it. So people aren't just born with charisma. It's not something that you just wake up one day and you go, that person has it and that person doesn't. What some people do have is more of a stage presence or a people presence about them, an external presence that they can bring with them. But that doesn't mean that other people are exempt from that. Okay. And I actually lost what I thought my charisma or confidence was for a long period of my life. I would say through most of high school, I was a really shy person. I didn't really like to be an extrovert. I was great at performing arts, and then you'd whack me into a social situation and I'd never really speak. Okay. And then if you fast forward 30 years to now and you look at what I do for a living and the women that I work with, it's pretty hard to imagine that I was ever a person who didn't actually have confidence, or who lacked charisma, or who lacked the ability to speak. Okay. A lot of people get really surprised when I tell them this story. Leah, you're saying your last session left you empowered. Great. And I hope to empower you all today as well with just the pieces of information that I'm giving you. So that's really why I'm here to give you this information, is to empower you. Thank you, Leah. But the other thing is, does anyone have teenage kids? Does anyone work with teenagers? Or is anyone just very much down with what the kids are talking about these days, the cool kids? Oxford University Press has actually said that Riz is the word of the year this year. Riz, if you don't know what Riz is the shortened version of charisma. Okay. And it's trending this year, apparently. So clearly it's important. People have obviously said suddenly charisma is something that we really care about. I think the kids are talking about it more in a dating sense, but the point is charisma is something that people are after. Okay. And it doesn't matter what area of life it is, people are automatically wanting whatever that person has that makes them show up and take up space. So ladies, in the chat, tell me, what do you actually think charisma is? I'm going to go through these 3 things with you today: the mindset, the art, and then applying charisma to your everyday scenarios. But what do you actually think? What's your definition of charisma? And try and think this off the top of your head. When you think of that word, or when you think of someone who has charisma, what are the qualities that come to mind for you? What are the things that someone who is charismatic would have? It can be qualities, it can be a feeling you get, it can be a vibe. Crystal, glowing, yep, so someone who's glowing perhaps. Candy, someone who is magnetic. I love the word magnetic. They walk into a room and you just feel their presence. Yes, presence is a big part of it, and you want more of it. Interesting. Serena, energy. Serena, give me more if you can with the energy. What kind of energy? Because there's good energy and there's not so good energy as well. So you're all giving me this idea of it's a feeling, right? And that's why charisma is so hard to define, because, and actually, if you look at all the research, no one's really been able to define it with a concrete method, because it's very hard to measure charisma. And that's because it really is something that makes us feel a certain way. And you're saying, yep, like Candy said, it's that magnetic energy. Thanks, Serena. So here's what research says that charisma actually is. It says it's a combination of highly developed communication skills. And this includes, when we talk about communication skills, we talk about emotional communication, verbal communication, and social scenarios. So it's not just about speaking, it's about the emotion and also the social scenario, the way that we handle the social scenarios behind it, which, ladies, if you said something about energy, magnetism, owning the room when you walk in, can you see how those 3 things would link together here? Okay. And there is very much that emotional side to it. So when we talk about a charismatic person, a couple of people have said this idea of being magnetic. Okay. I want to tell you what a charismatic person generally would have in terms of their characteristics. So they're effective in their eloquent and verbal delivery of communication. That means that they can really speak with ease. Okay. They just know how to speak. They're also a good conversationalist, ladies. So they're able to actually just initiate a conversation with strangers. They can make meaningful communications to a discussion. So in a work meeting, perhaps as well in a business meeting, maybe it's in a social situation as well. They have great social skills. And if you've ever been in a room with someone who has charisma, you'll notice they have this ability to just keep that momentum and conversation going. All right. It's not an effort for them to think about what to say next. They very much have this flow about them. All right. And it oozes confidence and it is effortless. They're emotionally expressive and quite enthusiastic. Have you ever met a charismatic person who is not enthusiastic or who doesn't have any passion about them? It's pretty rare to have someone who's just a blank slate, blank face, and still be charismatic. Okay. They're really driven. I've said eloquence, and I'll talk about eloquence later when we look at language, and they're self-confident and quite responsive to other people. That's a really important point that I'm going to talk about later, the responsiveness to other people, because it's not just about you. Okay. And that's also something that is a misconception when we talk about charisma. Ladies, at any point as well, if you've got a question, pop it in the chat or feel free to tap your mic on and you can interrupt me because it's a very interactive space here today. All right. So the charismatic person, they can also read a room with ease. I'm going to talk about the difference between in-person and social media perhaps as well. Okay. Because there's two ways that this can go, but they can read the energy of a room. Great speakers have this. They can literally, and I'll talk about this, read what's happening in a room and adjust however it is they're talking to suit the needs of the room in front of them. And they don't have to think about it for too long. A big characteristic of a charismatic person is that they're quick on their feet. They're quick thinkers. Okay. And I love that, Candy. Yeah, being present, giving someone their full attention and not being distracted. That's something that I'm going to talk about in the 5 C's later, but you're 100% right there. Okay, so they can read the room with ease. They can successfully read what the audience's reaction is to what they're saying. Are they picking up what I'm putting down or are they not really? Are they actually accepting what I'm saying? So if I was in the room with you ladies now, I would be reading your energy to go, is Crystal falling asleep over there? Is Candy texting? Why is she texting? What do I need to do to get to engage her again? But I'm not going to freak out about it and go, Candy's bored of me. She doesn't like me. I'm going to just adjust what I need. Okay. Adjust how I'm delivering to suit what you need in the room. So charismatic leader can alter the way that they're talking or whatever they're doing just to suit who the receiver is. And that's a really important skill to learn. If you want to just write this down, if you've got a pen, the biggest part of this is just high emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is so underrated. It's such a skill and it's something that we need to keep tapping into. Can everyone just write for me in the chat as well? What's your industry? So if you're a business owner, pop in business owner. If you're in education, if you're in hospitality, just pop in for me in the chat what your industry is as well. So I always like to know what your background is. If at the moment you don't have a professional background as well, if you're in between jobs, if you're a stay-at-home mum, pop that in. Still just as important. Okay. So Leah, I know you're in early years, Crystal business, Candy business and coaching, EA and VA, Francie, thank you. Yeah, so a few of us in business coaching. And regardless, everyone has some kind of professional outlet of themselves, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about, the difference between the two. Okay, so ladies, just going to move this out of my way. A few of us have said magnetic. Here's the top 3 things that a charismatic person would have. A magnetic attraction. There's something that makes you want to keep listening or just watch what that person's doing. So there's a charm, there's that appeal, there's that compellingness that we want to actually know, what's that person sipping? Because I want a little bit of that. Okay. And they do stand out as being different. In a world that is so obsessed with noise at the moment and trying to fight for the spotlight, and if you're a business owner, you'd know this. And Leah, you might know this as well, working in education, Francie for you as well. Even in the professional realm, everyone wants to get to the top of the ladder. Okay, everyone's fighting for that spot. So how do you stand out? That's the question that I always ask people. They have an influential presence as well, ladies. So there is that ability to influence, to inspire just through who they are, through how they talk, and through how they engage other people. And then, of course, there's that aura of confidence, which I'll talk about shortly, because there is also a misconception with confidence. Now, if you can tell me in the chat, who comes to mind? So when you think of these sorts of qualities, who comes to mind for you? It can be a TV character. It can be someone you've met in person. It can be a celebrity. who comes to mind? I want you to think of specific people that when I tell you about these qualities, this magnetism, this aura, this ability to communicate well, to just be at ease, to naturally own the room, who comes to mind? Have a think for me. Tell me some people in the chat. Again, personal people you've met, or it can also just be people that you've seen, famous people. Quite often we draw inspiration from famous people as well. And while you're thinking, I'm going to throw a few of mine on the screen for you. Have not met any of these people in real life. This is what I used to think, and sometimes still do think when I think about charisma, okay? Are these sorts of personalities, people who seem to just have, they ooze a little bit of confidence, not even a little bit, they ooze charm, they ooze confidence. They're very relaxed in how they take up space. All right, George Clooney's really famous for that. He just has it. Don't know what it is, but he's got it. All right. But for other people, it might not be so dominant. It might not be that they're really extravagant in terms of how they present themselves, like Miranda Priestly from Devil Wears Prada, for example. It can be a little bit more subtle than that. Okay, but generally, this is what we think of. Candy, you're saying no one famous, but when you were at a social event recently, there was a girl there who you found incredibly warm and magnetic. It was her natural ease. Love the word natural. Yeah. Her smile, the way she really looked you in the eye, paid attention to every word, body language. Yes. And you just want to be in that person's presence, right? Because that's on a daily level what a charismatic person is. Sometimes we confuse confidence and charisma with all of this, what you see in front of you, like this big, loud character, the Harvey Specters from Suits, the Miranda Priestleys, the Beyoncés. Yes, these people might have charisma, all right? But it doesn't always have to be that. And that's what I want to explain to you today is that it's about tapping into who you already are as a person, okay? And using the skills you already have. So the number one skill that every charismatic person has is impeccable communication skills. And Candy, I love your response because communication goes two ways. It's not just about you doing all the talking. It's what I call a synergistic exchange. Synergistic exchange just means we're exchanging energy. When I'm talking to Crystal, when I'm talking to Leah, straight away we're sizing each other up without even realizing it. It's subconscious. We're making an impression on each other and we're deciding, is this my kind of person? And how you actually exchange that energy comes down to how charismatic you are. And that gives you the ability to inspire and to influence, to leave an impression. And Candy, you've already said this, to make you unforgettable. So once you leave that room, that person's still thinking, I like that person, or I want to know more about that person. Okay. And that's the importance of understanding, well, what energy am I bringing to the table when I communicate with other people? So I want you just to have a quick think to yourself, ladies, here, because the reflection of what you currently do is really important. Your energy is your currency. It's actually your resume. And so are your words because it's part of your energy. So I want you to think about your personal energy. What does your energy and the way that you speak say about you as a person? You're welcome to write this in the chat or just have a solo reflection to yourself, whatever you're more comfortable with. What does it say about you when people see you for the first time, when people are in a room with you for the first time, when people, if you're a social media person, watch your videos on socials? What is your energy saying? If you were someone looking in from the outside at you in a work setting, in a social setting, in a business setting, what does your energy say about you? And I want you to think of a couple of things. The language you generally use, your body language, what you do as well when you're in an uncomfortable situation. And when I say an uncomfortable situation for you, maybe that's I'm in a social setting and I don't know anyone here at this party or this networking event. What's your go-to? Do you whip out your phone to text? Do you station yourself to a safe place in a corner to grab a drink or just busy yourself with something? Do you go to the bathroom? Do you wait until someone you know comes in the room so you can latch onto them and have that safe space. So just think of what your mechanisms or your habits are. When you speak as well, I want you to really think about this. When you speak, how much talking do you do when you're conversing with someone else? Is it balanced? Are you often the oversharer or the undersharer? Do you give back as much as you're getting from the person? Because those are all really important clues and indicators of what you're like in terms of your communication skills. Okay. Okay. So, team, the myths. I want to just dispel the myths before we actually get into what makes up charisma. Here are some myths about charisma. And that's why I showed you those pictures of famous people, because sometimes we think, oh, that's what it is. Okay. In order to stand out, I have to be the loudest in the room. Absolutely untrue. In order to have charisma, I need to have the most long-winded, complex answers. I need to sell myself. I have to prove myself. And therefore, I've got to use really complex answers and dominate the entire conversation. Basically, I've got to flex my knowledge. Unnecessary. Okay. And the same for the last one, only speaking in a domineering way to try and impress people and evoke this authority. That is a myth about charisma. In fact, charismatic people often do the opposite. Sometimes narcissists, if you've seen what a narcissist does or the label of a narcissist, get confused with being charismatic, but there's a totally different psychological aspect to that, which I'll talk about later. Okay. So this was in your definition of charisma. Delete it from your memory for now. Okay. Because it's actually the opposite. So let's get into what it is. And charisma, we could go on about all day. I could do 5 masterclasses on this, but what I've done is just reduce this into a 5-step framework for you. The things that you need to understand and the things that you can work on step by step. So number 1 being connection. And again, if you're taking notes, write this down. Connection is probably the most important thing. And so many of you have already mentioned that in your answers today. So connection, establishing a genuine rapport and an empathy with other people. Can I stress, ladies, it's not all about you. Sorry, not sorry, but it's not. Okay? It's actually about how you make other people feel. You also need to be able to think on your feet. So in a social situation, for example, I always say it's great to have those questions ready to ask. Easy ones. How did you get into such and such? So Crystal, how did you get into Candy? You're in business. What are you doing in business? Tell me a little bit about your businesses. Are you from such and such? Are you from around here? How are you finding the event we're at today? Little openings. A, it's polite, but B, it also just says I'm comfortable enough to ask the other person about themselves, and it doesn't really matter who I am at this point, okay? I want to stress, ladies, keep your personal stories light, okay? People ask about you, A, because they're intrigued, or B, to be polite. That's the honest truth, okay? And I'm going to be honest, no one wants to hear your whole life story straight away, unless, of course, they ask you more questions. Give a little bit and then allow the person to ask more. Let them decide whether they're actually intrigued, okay, and whether or not they want to know more. So many people make the mistake of thinking, well, I've just got to tell them my whole life story, and I did this, and I did this, and I've got 3 sons, and then I moved here, and then, and people go, okay, I'm just going to get a drink now. I'm going to go, all right, because you've actually overpowered the conversation. On social media, if you're someone who's showing up on socials for business, for example, building that connection with your audience is even more important because you want to actually do that through the way that you're talking to them. Okay? Talk to them, not at them. We're not lecturing people. And that's especially important when you're making reels as well. We'll talk about that when we go through language in a moment. People won't remember every single thing you said, but they're definitely going to remember how they felt energetically after the conversation. Give me a wave if you've been in a conversation that's drained you before, right? Or just type in the chat, yeah, that's been me. We've all been there when we've been like, can this conversation end? Maybe we've been that person ourselves and we've gone, I need to stop talking or I'm not feeling this conversation. All right. And so if we can actually start to just become aware of these sorts of things, then it just makes for easier connection with other people. Because as humans, all we're doing is connecting with others. That's what we do every day. Okay. And my biggest advice here with connection is don't be a phony. People can smell phony person the way they can smell ChatGPT. Okay? Be you. Be you whenever you're connecting with other people, because people want to connect with a real person. So what does that look like? It looks like these sorts of things, ladies. Yes, tell your story, but be concise. Okay, give them 3 points about you, leave it there, and then let the conversation naturally keep going from there. Learn about who you're conversing with. So, this is what I want to say about charismatic people. They're fantastic listeners. They listen to understand. They don't just listen to respond automatically. So often we're having a conversation and we're listening, but we're so ready to say what we want to say next. So, being charismatic is actually being a good listener as well. That's the emotional intelligence coming in. Body language is super important. Okay. Even on your social media, if that's you, you need to smile. You need to actually use some facial expression. Don't stand like this and hope that someone talks to you. Okay. Be open in your body language, because that's when we establish that safe connection. And again, changing that tone in voice. So whenever we're speaking to people, when I say be you, don't be a phony. If you've not met someone before and you're going to go up to them and say, "Sup, girl, how's it going?" All right. If that's me on the daily, that's totally fine, but that's not necessarily what I need to present to someone the first second I see them. So you want to have that balance of professional yet personal. And as I said before, reading the room, reading the conversation, understand how much of myself now am I letting out of the box here with this person. I'm going to talk about the flow of conversation in a little bit more detail, okay? But generally, number one, connection, that's what it looks like. Number two, Denzel's here for a reason, okay? It's confidence, but it's quiet confidence. Now, confidence gets confused all the time with grandiosity or bravado. There's a difference between confidence and grandiosity. Grandiosity is an unrealistic inflation of who you are and of what you can do, the ego, blowing it out of proportion and having to put on a front. And when you have to put on a front, again, give me a yes in the chat or a nod if you're like, yeah, we've been there before with these people. We can feel that. We don't feel like the conversation is sincere. We don't feel like this person really cares about us. And we just feel like we're here to let this person's ego take up the room. Okay? It's all about them. So there's a difference between being confident and being overly zealous and inflating your ego just to flex what you can do. Confidence, if you look at the definitions of it, the deepest and earliest definitions of it, it's an unconscious thing, actually. It's an unconscious power that you radiate. So we're going to come back to magnetism that a couple of the ladies have spoken about, and energy. You radiate your confidence. It's an unspoken thing, but it's there and it comes through your presence. When we're looking at quiet confidence, ladies, and I always love this quote, that confidence is silent and insecurities are loud. Ask yourself, if you're having a conversation with someone that you've never met before, I should say as well, how confident are you with allowing silence? I'm talking like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds of silence between you and a person you've met. So often we're not really comfortable with that, and we feel like we need to fill up the air with words just to make it feel a little bit more safe. Okay? In a world that really celebrates loud noise and loud voices and people who are over the top, which, you know what, I'm an over the top person, so no hate to those people because that is me. But I actually had to learn that quiet confidence is more refreshing for people. It's subtle. There's a self-assuredness about it. It doesn't require this external validation. And there's also that balance of authenticity and being humble about yourself. Okay. Allowing yourself to go, I am enough. I don't need to yell it out that, hey guys, I'm enough. I just am. And my presence says that. So it doesn't need to be the loudest person in the room. It doesn't need to fight for attention. It is already knowledgeable and it knows what it brings to the table. And if you've met someone who has charisma and true confidence, and why I put Denzel there before Denzel Washington is because you don't see him on socials all the time. You don't see him up at the paparazzi all the time, but you know when he's coming to a movie, best believe he has the respect of the audience because he's Denzel. Okay. And so that really is what quiet confidence is all about. In social settings, what does it look like? Relax, for starters. Okay, if you think of someone who's quietly confident, they're always relaxed. They don't need to talk too much. They don't talk too fast or too loudly. They're really socially aware. It's really frustrating to be around a person who you just can't get a word in. It's annoying for us. We don't feel valued. We don't feel like we need to be in this space. Okay. So conversation's like a traffic light. You need to learn, okay, it's my turn to go. Oh, it's my turn to pause. And then I stop. And you need to be able to listen in for that. So number 3, listening with feeling. Candy, you mentioned this early on as well, that you felt like this person really made you feel seen. That's where that empathy comes in. If someone says, you know what, yeah, actually, I'm just going through a tough time at the moment, and you go, oh, really? Okay. Wow, how amazing is the lighting over there? You think that person feels seen by you? Absolutely not. Okay. So rapport building is all part of this, and we build it by matching the flow of the conversation. How ready is this person to take on what I'm going to say next? All right. And matching it. If you're a fast talker, sometimes you need to judge yourself from a bird's eye view and go, okay, slow it down, let this person have a moment. Okay. And that is all part of what confidence is in a quiet way. Put your phone down, be okay with standing alone is also my advice, and be okay with taking up space just as you are. Don't feel like you need to latch on to something for that safety. If you've ever had feelings of social anxiety, this is probably the biggest challenge, okay, is feeling like you're okay just to stand or just to be, and like you don't need a distraction to kind of get out of there, okay? So I'm going to leave you with this quote for this section, number 2. In this world of noise, learn how to take up space without competing for it. There's a great saying that says the loudest one in the room sometimes can be the weakest, not because they're a bad person, okay, but because fast talkers make a lot of mistakes because they don't have time for their brain to catch up on what their mind's thinking, okay, because their mouth is moving too quickly. So that's an important part of this quiet confidence. Ladies, I'm going to move now to the art of charisma. How are we all doing? We're all good so far? If you've got a question, pop it in the chat at any time. Number 3 is the command of language, all right? So everyone else at the moment might be doing something, but it doesn't mean that you have to do that as well, okay? Dale Carnegie, who's a fantastic public speaking coach, always says if everyone else is doing it, you don't want to do it at all. And I think in the world of everyone following what's trending, it's really easy to fall into that trap of going, oh, well, everyone's doing this, so I have to do that. Elite communicators stand out because they choose to be different. They choose to be elite. And that is how charisma is born. It's not born by fitting in and doing what everybody else does. Shrinking language. If you've done a masterclass with me before, you know I talk about this a lot, but women do this. I think it's 3 times more, yes, on average, 3 times more than men in conversation. Have a look at the little highlights in pink there and ask yourself, how often do I do this? Shrinking language. We apologize. Sometimes we say sorry for knocking into someone when they knocked into us because we're just really polite. Does that make sense? That implies that you don't make sense. But you can say, does anyone have questions? Have you noticed in this entire time I've not said to you, does that make sense? Am I making sense? I know I'm making sense, but what I'm really asking is, do you have questions for the information that I'm giving? Sometimes we use the word just in emails. Sometimes we use it in conversation all the time. I just wanted to, is it okay if I just need a little bit of, straight away you've actually taken yourself down in terms of importance. Okay, so a charismatic person understands how to use language to benefit themselves, but also to express their certainty. Now, I want to talk about casual language. And again, if you've done a masterclass with me, you'll know I say this. Think about when to be casual. I'm not saying you have to be a robot that's formal 100% of the time, but if you're casual all of the time, you're not going to get the respect. People aren't going to remember you. But if you have a balance, and when I talk about casual, casual can be you're listening and you're checking your phone and you're going, yep, that's casual. Communication is also body language. Don't forget that. Candy, to come back to the example you gave in the beginning, you said that girl gave you eye contact. She listened, she nodded, she conversed. That is all part of conversation. And that's the balance of professional and personal. Okay. If you are 100% formal as well, people aren't going to connect with you because you're just talking like a robot. So you just need to learn, how do I balance my casual self with also someone who can speak with good vocab, can listen intently, and can actually make sense and contribute to a conversation. Okay, equally as important. Yes, so true. It is true, Leah. It's very important. Now, eloquence is my favorite word when we talk about charisma because the two go hand in hand, okay? Charismatic people are eloquent. They're either eloquent in two ways, how they present themselves, so how they dress, how they walk, how they talk, their energy. That's where the magnetism comes from, the body language, but also it's in how they speak. This is why the command of language, that command is that third C. Using the right verbal and non-verbal cues can either portray you as self-assured or really not confident at all, or the opposite, arrogant. We don't want to be either of the two extremes. We want to be smack bang in the middle. So being self-assured, being certain, and also persuasive, and I don't mean being a car salesman. What I mean is that persuasive meaning you're engaging in your persona. People want to listen to you. They actually feel compelled to actually watch what you're doing. It's like watching the last point in a Wimbledon tennis match. They're hanging on every word you say. Choosing to speak well is part of that eloquence. Using full words, using full vocab, it actually stirs your listener and makes them remember you later. Okay? So, in a world where it's really easy to be casual at the moment, we're all guilty of it, guys. Okay? Choose when you can actually put on that eloquence. And if I want you to think about like, what's your area of expertise and knowledge? If you're a manager, if you're a business owner, if you're someone who has a special role in the company that you work for example, do you sometimes fall into the trap of, oh, everyone's really chill today, so I'm just going to be chill too? You can also elevate the atmosphere of the room just with the energy that you bring. That is also part of the leadership that comes into play with being a charismatic person. Now, I also go through these a lot. If you haven't done my Art of Communicating Like a Boss masterclass, it's also free. It's on my site, and I go through language, all these fillers that we use in a lot more depth. But I just want to pop this up here today because these are the things that we see most commonly in our language, like sorta, kinda. All right. We often just diminish ourselves by not pausing, number one. The amount of times we say like in a sentence means that we just need to stop talking for that 1 second and actually think about what's going to come next instead of filling the air with words. So again, fast talkers versus people who are quietly confident. People who are quietly confident are okay to pause and take that 10 or 5 seconds before continuing. All right. Okay. I've mentioned that charisma isn't innate, but what I do want to say is it's three things. It's your intention of what you're saying, your words, your body language, and your authenticity. Okay, so we're going to move into what the art of this is now. Class. Now, a lot of people think when I go through class that I'm going to teach you how to sit nicely with a cup of tea and talk really eloquently like this. Not the case. Okay. In this world of everyone becoming a little bit more casual, we're actually forgetting the importance of class. And class isn't old school. I want to remind you that class is an action. It's just a matter of setting higher standards for yourself and living up to it, starting with how you present yourself, starting with how you show up to a conversation, all right, and starting with how you speak. So, a classy communicator, I often think of Barack Obama here because you are well groomed. When I say well groomed, your style is your style, however you choose to show up. But you're showing up in a way that is presentable because you care. It's okay to care. It's not because you take yourself too seriously. It's because you respect yourself, actually, and you respect your audience. When I used to be a teacher many years ago, people would say to me, you always wear heels to work every day. And I didn't wear them every day, but that was an exaggeration. But I would always present well. And I used to say to my students, yes, because how can I stand in front of you and speak to you about how to improve your life and improve your knowledge if I'm dressed like, someone who just rolled out of bed? You won't take me seriously. Why would you listen to me? The same goes for you as a business owner, how you show up, as a manager, how you show up, as an employee, how you show up. You don't have to be a leader or a manager or have a title to be classy. Okay. The same goes for being a great listener. It's actually classy to listen to people. Being calm and composed. If someone else is choosing to go really low, you can go higher. You don't have to downgrade yourself to the level of conversation that's taking place. It says a lot about someone who can go above that. All right. Michelle Obama, when they go low, I go high. Same thing. Okay. And number 5, ladies, is conviction. Conviction and together with the confidence factor and class all goes together. Now, you can't fake conviction. I want to say that. People think you can, you can't. People sniff it out a mile away. When I talk about conviction, yes, it's your ability to convince people, but it's also about establishing yourself as a trusted authority figure. In my course, which I run for 6 weeks, we go through how to actually present yourself as a trusted authority figure in whatever industry you're in. A trusted authority figure thinks about 3 things. What they say actually matters, how they say it matters, when they say it matters. And when you speak with conviction, people believe in your integrity. Integrity goes a long way these days. Authenticity is also part of that. So your authority, your conviction is your reputation. When you speak to people, socials, in the office, online, other people have to value you as being authoritative and reliable and trustworthy. Trustworthy as humans, it's probably the biggest thing, that we actually like the person. We feel like we've unlocked a little bit about who that person is and that they're credible and that there's someone who we can actually go, yeah, I want to hear more from that person, or I'd be in the room with that person again because I want to know more straight away. So your authority and your conviction, that becomes your reputation, okay? This will be in my PDF that I send out to you in your email, but these are the 5 steps to actually establishing that trusted authority figure status and that conviction status, your credibility, your expertise as a person, how reliable you are. And that's not just how reliable you are as a source in terms of your credit, like, does she know what she's talking about? It's also, do you do what you say you're going to do? Because people with charisma do that. They're reliable, they show up, they say something and they actually do it. Reputation and influence is also part of that, but also your relevance. How relevant is what you bring to the table? And are you sitting here just telling me a story that's completely irrelevant to this conversation and you haven't actually thought about whether I'm actually buying into what you're saying in the first place? So that's, again, the difference between the ego and the integrity of conviction here, okay? Ladies, just have a second to think as well. Trusted authority figures, who are people that you've come across in your lifetime, and try and think of real life people that you would say, yeah, that person's got conviction, or that person's a trusted authority figure because of those reasons. So they're credible. It could be a manager, it could be a mentor you've had in the past or a mentor you have now. It could be a friend, like you always have that friend who knows exactly what they're saying and you always go, yep, she knows what she's talking about. I'm 100% in. If she thinks that, then I think that. There's something that they do, okay? And all of that is charisma. It's being able to convince, it's being able to persuade, it's being able to have this magnetism. People with charisma are often followed and they often engage people for those reasons. So when you think about those people who are trusted, who have that authority to them, think back to the things we've spoken about in the 5 C's of charisma, and I guarantee one of those aspects will pop up as something being a quality that they have as well. Okay, ladies, I want to leave you with this for the moment. And we're going to just circle back to where we began with charisma in general. But being a charismatic woman, and I'm going to leave this quote on the screen for you to read. And I want you just to take away 3 key words from this quote that's on the screen. Write them down if you've got a pen. Keep them with you in your mind if you're not writing anything down. But what I want you to think of is, what's one aspect, one key word that really lights up here in this quote? It could be subtlety. It could be magnetism or magnetic aura that you actually want to take away as being something that you can work on. And I want you to think of a specific scenario that you can apply it to. It could be work life. It could be social scenarios. Next time you're networking with people. It could be next time you're showing up online on social media. It could be the next time you've actually got to get into a room and deliver a presentation or run a workshop or a masterclass or have a meeting. What's one thing that you want to actually be able to work on and to change? If it's your energy, Which of the 5 C's do you think would fit in most with that? Is it your command of language? Do you have a really low modality when you talk? Do you tend to use a lot of filler language and that lowers your conviction, for example, and how convincing you can be? Is it your body language? Do you often shrink in the corner, or you're not that person who wants to speak? Do you often shy away from things, or do you actually step up to the spotlight and go, yeah, I can do it? Are you an oversharer? Sometimes if you're an oversharer and you're a loud, extroverted person or someone who's really, really enthusiastic, we have to learn when to dial that back a little bit. If you're a fast talker, that also might go hand in hand with you. That you think, yeah, when I'm really excited, I talk too fast and I don't think about what I'm saying. So I want you just to think of that one area that you can work on and that one skill that you might be able to apply and use that in this next few weeks, this next few months. It's that second half of the year now. Become more conscious of it and ask yourself, how can I just start to not police yourself, but become more aware and monitor where I'm doing that? Okay. Ladies, does anyone have any questions? I want to pause and just ask if anyone has any questions, comments, anything that's landing for you right now. Anything that you want to share, Carmen, thank you for sharing as well. You need to be more potent and learn the power of pause. Absolutely. So not being scared to pause is such a big part of charisma. Not being scared to just own the silence is a big part of charisma as well. What I want to ask you really quickly is if you can type in the chat a key takeaway, something that stuck with you today, anything that I've said, anything that you're like, yeah, I didn't know this, or I need to talk, I need to make sure that I'm focusing on that a little bit more. Maybe it's perhaps something you hadn't considered about charisma, something that you undervalued or that you thought, that doesn't really matter, but I've actually said to you today, no, that's really important. Maybe it's the power of listening. Candy not being an oversharer. Yeah, when she walks into the room, she changes the atmosphere. Yes, undervalued. Confidence is subtle. Yes. And ladies, that's something as well, particularly with feminine energy. Sometimes when we're working with females, not always, but sometimes it can be really competitive. And the temptation is to go in and be louder or be more or take up more space. But you don't have to. All you need to do is hold your space, right? Steady in the storm of the noise around you. Hold your space, and that space that you have, own it. With that, you will own the room eventually. But it starts with owning the space in front of you. The subtlety of that, owning that space, people start to understand that you're not worried about what's happening around you. And that in itself is a skill and something to be really, really mindful of. Learning to be okay with silences. Love that too, Leah. Beautiful. So ladies, what I want to leave you with today, and I know some of you have asked me about this already and said, I missed it. I didn't know it was on. When are you doing this next? So I just want to let you know that the next round, so I do have a 6-week course. In this 6-week course, we go through, this is probably a tiny snippet of everything we go through in this 6 weeks. It's purely online. You can take longer than 6 weeks if you like. You've actually got access to this for 6 months. But in this course, you've got access to heaps of masterclasses, and I'm talking about 60 hours in total of masterclasses. You also have access to me. We do weekly, fortnightly coaching calls on Zoom, okay, where I'll do some hot seating with you. I'll say, Crystal, give me a scenario, let's go. And I actually do one-on-one coaching and small group coaching with you in that 6 weeks. Everything I do with you is not something that's just been found on the internet and boom, thrown into a course. It's all backed by research for this reason, okay? It's really interactive. I do push you outside of your comfort zone, but if you're looking to just make that point of difference in your communication style, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like, I know I can do better, but how do I do better? This is an excellent way to begin. All right. We start next month. So the 9th of the 9th, easy to remember, September. If you're someone who just needs a little bit of a push in your professional life, in your business life, in your personal life too, in your communication skills, this is such an easy way to be able to tap into that and to get that coaching. I'm going to give you a discount code as well. And I hate to be that cheesy person, but this is just for masterclass people only who've been in this masterclass today. This will be there till September 1st. So if you do want to join, we don't start for another month. So it gives you a couple of weeks to gear yourself up and be ready for it. But it's a fantastic way to be able to get more modules, more masterclasses, more one-on-one coaching the results that you'll get in that 6 weeks, just from being aware of these sorts of things, if anything just stuck out for you today, this is the sort of stuff that I work on with you. Okay, so it's there for you. You'll get an email about this. I'll also email out the code for you as well. But ladies, that brings us to the end of our masterclass today, and I'm really happy just to have your energy here with me in this space. If you want to reach out to me at any point, some of you have me on socials. You can email me, jump on LinkedIn if LinkedIn is your thing. But thank you so much, and I hope you've had something stick out for you today that